Awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can shoot that direction though.
No, that's cool, man. Okay. I'm just writing down your schedule.
What do you want to ask me? I'm here to answer.
I wanted to start with like who you are, what you do, where you're from.
So my name is Omari Salisbury. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Converge Media. It was a company I started like 4 years ago in Dubai, moved back home here to Seattle. And, we transitioned. We used to be in more technology there, but came back home. It's more PR and communications. And man, right now it's kind of like we on the front line of everything out here in Seattle.
Okay. How long have you been here? Because Chaz Chop has been up for about 8 days now? Maybe
yeah, man, Chop ain't even that old, but it's like we've been on this since the very first day of protests in Seattle. That was May 29th. Was the very first day of protests here. So we've been out here for a while, you feel me? And just covering everything. But there was the barricade. Everybody knows about CHOP right now, but the Western barricade was there for almost 10 days. And the Western barricade was, it was wild. That's where you saw them funky images out of Seattle with all the tear gas, the pepper spray, the rubber bullets, all that stuff came out of the Western barricade. The barricade fell last Monday. You know what I'm saying? Is when it fell, and then now it's transitioned into Chaz and Chop and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is, the reason why Chop or Chaz even exists is because the protesters was going so hard, really, and not even in a violent sense. They just came back every day, and the police was giving it to them every day. You know what I'm saying? Myself, I got shot with hella rubber bullets, ate a lot of tear gas, everything else. We'll give you some of the footage out there. But they kept coming every day, and the whole world saw it. Like, I have filmed a video, it's been around the world so many times, of when the police had lied, and the police said protesters had started a riot up here. But I was right there on the barricade in the front line, and you see that the police had actually tried to grab somebody's umbrella. They were wrestling over it, and then it just popped off from there. You know what I'm saying? And so the whole world was seeing this footage night after night after night. Sometimes through all the cross streams, we get 100,000 people, you know what I'm saying, watching the stream, watching what's going down. So ultimately, the Seattle Police Department, instead of just opening up Pine Street, that's what the protesters wanted, because, the neighborhood, the police had blockaded the neighborhood. Instead of opening up Pine Street, they just closed the whole precinct. You know what I'm saying? And wasn't no protest. Anybody who's telling you that they saw that coming is like, nah, because we was out here every day. And even that morning that they abandoned the East Precinct, we do a morning show out here, and on the morning show, we could see that they were installing all this fencing because they were going to put chain link fence. 3 hours later, we see, because the police precinct's literally right there, it's right across the alley, we see them getting moving trucks, and we see them moving stuff in and out. At the same time, the city's telling people they're just reducing their footprint. And we sitting there like, nah, they ain't reducing no footprint. We see officers carrying bags out of there and everything else. And then they're putting wood and fencing up there at the East Precinct. Then like Monday, like 5 o'clock, the police pulled out, the people rushed in, and they claimed the East Precinct. You know what I'm saying? And then a few days later, the whole concept of Chaz and Chop and everything else came out. I mean, everybody was really surprised. And the thing is before the police abandoned the precinct, all the protesters had was their voice, some signs, their feet and everything else. But once they abandoned the precinct, now the protesters actually have an asset. You know what I'm saying? They got a whole lot of leverage that they didn't have before. So, I mean, it's wild. It's a rapidly evolving situation here.
What do you think's going to happen? Come Monday, like you said, when everybody's got to go back to work.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing is the people who are in the Chaz, man, I got you. The people who are in the Chaz, the thing is they live in the Chaz. Now, you got a lot of people who come in, they're kind of tourists, there's journalists like us and everything else. But the heart and soul of this protest is fueled by people who live in the neighborhood. So you got to imagine, like on TV, I've heard them say downtown Seattle. This isn't downtown Seattle. So anywhere in America, somebody's watching this. Imagine if you was protesting the local police precinct that's in your neighborhood, and then they abandon the precinct, but you live a block from the precinct. You could go and protest every day because it's in your neighborhood. And that's the thing here with the Chaz or the Chop. This is being fueled by people who live on the block. Some of these people live right across the street from the precinct. They eat breakfast, come downstairs, and they're in the Chaz. So, in that sense, if you're talking about stamina, the stamina is here. And we saw that when the Western Barricade was still up, because there's a thing they call mutual aid. And you know what I'm saying? And so we saw so much mutual aid out here. You could get free water, free food, free PPE. They even have massage therapists out here. If your back was out of whack from protesting, you could get a massage. Those are all indicators that people were entrenched. There's medical units here, all kinds of other stuff that's out here. And so these are the things that actually sustain a protest, and that's what we see here. So if it's just left to the people, these guys are going to keep pushing, because, you know, there's absolutely this isn't a destination protest. Downtown Seattle, Wall Street, all that, those are destination protests. These people are protesting where they live.
I keep hearing outside, like, this is not a party, this is not a picnic. And one of the things that's very interesting is, like, on my side of the country, you don't really hear anything about this anymore. Like, every once in a while, you might see something pop up, but for the most part, it's focused on New York, or it's focused on LA, or it's focused on pretty much anywhere but here, which is why I came here, because, like, I follow it on social media. So I'm paying attention to the things that are happening. I'm like, holy shit, I got to get out of there. I got to get out there. So do you feel like this is divesting any energy or attention from the movement?
What they have going on here is something that's uniquely Seattle, but it's different in its own way. Like, who else is protesting and say that they got a whole precinct? They got at the time that the police is literally pulled out the area. I don't know, you know, as a journalist, I sit here and say, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because, you know, there's also different impacts. You know, that neighborhood services, that precinct service is a big area, including the legacy black neighborhood in Seattle, the Central District. That's so my personal neighborhood is seeing increased response times and everything else because of what's occurring here. But I think every city, because all the politics are dynamic, but one thing that's common in every city is it's like, man, there's a sense of inequity, and there's a sense of injustice socially, economically. How it plays out in every city is uniquely theirs. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't think that you could really compare, you know what I'm saying, this to that and everything else. I mean, when you look at down south, although there's been a lot of racism and things here, you know, there's not statues of Confederate soldiers and this and that in Seattle. And so the way that a protest might play out in somewhere like Atlanta or Albany or even Houston is going to be different than Seattle. This is something that's uniquely here. I mean, these guys are like, man, we got a precinct. We're going to leverage it. We're going to create a community. And that's exactly what they've done. Now, Chief Carmen Best, a black woman, the chief of police here, she said that she wants her precinct back. She said that right now she's all about dialogue to be able to get it back. He was like, hey, let's just talk. We'll get this back. But I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's going to be difficult for the Seattle Police Department to have any kind of sense of respectability, you know, in as far as in policing goes, that if they've abandoned a precinct and now the community's turned into a community center. That's what these guys want to do. They want to turn it into a community center. The mayor, clearly she's saying, hey, whatever the chief wants to do, they're kind of pushing it back and forth. The mayor is saying that she's in a listening session. The chief says she's in a listening session, but sooner or later, it's got to go from listening to action. Right? And a lot of people in Seattle, thank you, a lot of people in Seattle who are here, they're supporting from a distance, but it's a lot of pressure from outside of Seattle. It's like, how are you letting these guys do this? How are you letting get away with this and everything else? And what's very interesting is I think a lot of people have come under attack here in the media because they're open carrying their firearms. And you would think that a lot of organizations, like maybe even the NRA, would be actually supportive because they're just exercising their Second Amendment right. This is an open carry state. So, you know, we're seeing that different groups and organizations are picking and choosing as far as what's going on here. And of course, we have the president weighing in as well. But as far as the Chaz and you walking around here, these people, they're going to be here. And to be honest with you, this is the Arts District of Seattle. June is a time of year where you got lots of festivals anyway. This is like what a Sunday right here would look like anyway, you know. And one last thing I would say is like with protesting, one thing I found is people are hella judgmental in protesting. Like I just reading on my Twitter feed, because these guys, you'd have people on the front line with their signs, Black Lives Matter, defund the police. And then over there at that park that you see, they're protesting by just occupying the park. Then you have bands over there that will be playing, and that was their protest, and they got the band playing. So in Seattle, protesting took on lots of different, forms, where in other cities it might just be what we traditionally find as protesting. But, if it just works for people out here, you know what I'm saying? And then we're seeing this is the end result.
And you're a Seattle native?
From Seattle, Central District of Seattle, 29th and Jackson, James A. Garfield High School.
So you ever have you ever seen anything like this before? Like,
no, but man, Seattle's kind of different like that. It's another neighborhood called Fremont. If this happened in Fremont, we'd probably just, move on. But now we haven't seen anything like this here in Seattle. In the last night, I knew something was going to happen because of all the days when the Western Barricade was still here and people were getting smacked up, tear gassed and everything else. That last night, people actually fought back. It used to be the guys would get tear gas, shot with rubber bullets. They reconstitute the line, hands up, don't shoot, get tear gassed again until they were out of the vicinity. But that last night before they evacuated is when you started seeing people just fight back. They were throwing anything that they could find. And it was crazy. It was a little street war. And I mean, of course, they were outmanned and outgunned. They were training the rubber bullets. You know what I'm saying? We got a notice saying that they might deploy the LRAD on the protesters, which is some audio disorientation. But the protesters started barricading and they were just fighting. But it was a whole new level of escalation. And the next day, Seattle police, they abandoned the precinct.
I'm curious to think about that. I think the last thing, because I'm thinking about everything that I'm seeing outside, and I'm thinking about Seattle, and I'm thinking about Washington, and I'm thinking about the fact that it is predominantly white. And if this were to happen in fucking Atlanta, no. If this were to happen in any other place that is predominantly black, like you wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have a police station. Wouldn't have a police chief give up her police station. Right, it wouldn't happen. So it's just
well. The thing is the mayor is the one who gave the order to give up the police precinct. Like most cities in America, the chief is appointed while a sheriff is elected. Right. So you know what I'm saying. A sheriff could be like, "Nah, I'm not giving up a precinct," but a police chief follows the directive of the mayor. And something that's interesting here. Let me just be very frank with you. For all those days when the Western Barricade was there and it was going down, it was funky with the police, that was a 90% white people who was out there, you know what I'm saying, taking the hit and everything else. But if you talk to them, they were just like, look, man, we're protesting because we just want a better life for black people. Can't tell you exactly what legislation or what this and that, but we're going to keep making noise until something changes for black people in Seattle. So I think the bigger question is like, you were like, man, in Atlanta, somebody couldn't go and take over a precinct. The question is in Atlanta, where white people stay and protest and get sprayed with the bullets, pepper gas, you know what I'm saying, pepper spray, all this kind of stuff, and sustain a protest to say, you know what, the black people in Atlanta need a change, and we're going to stay on the front line until it happens. That's what we saw here. That's an even bigger question. We know that a lot of police departments in America, they might not have abandoned their precinct, but how many cities in America where the white people, and this is an affluent neighborhood here, you know what I'm saying, 500 square foot studio apartment, $1,500, 500 square feet. You see what I'm saying? This is an affluent neighborhood in Seattle. How many places in America where affluent white people come out every single day and be on the front line and be like, look, man, we just want a better life for black people. Now, the barricade moving and them getting the East Precinct was unforeseen. But these people had a sustained occupation of the area. And that's why that energy from that sustained occupation is now moved up there to the Chaz. And something else, these guys got their victory in a sense now because the barricade's gone and they got the East Precinct. And the first thing they did is like, oh, we got this Chaz now. Now all the black people come over here and tell us what you want. And that's what you've been seeing for the last few days out here. And that's why you see these black speakers and everything else. The white people were like, we got this for you guys. Now use this as leverage with the city to get what it is that you want. And just like 3 days ago, it's a group called Africa Town. For 3 years now, they were supposed to get an old fire station that had been closed. It was supposed to be transferred to them. All of a sudden, the mayor transfers Fire Station 6. People are like, oh, well, you know what? We need money for X, Y, and Z. The mayor has now committed $100 million a year for the next 10 years, $1 billion and everything else. So another spin on the story is, like I said, where else in America would white people come out and not the funny protests where you go and we shall overcome and everything. I mean, man, we was getting our ass whipped. And I say we because as a journalist, I was on the front line out there. And I was standing with you, man, the police, they was whipping our ass with chemicals, with you know what I'm saying, with pepper spray, with rubber bullets and everything. And people came back again and again and again and said they're not leaving until black people in Seattle have a better future. And that's really what it is right there. We know in Atlanta, we know in Houston and Philly, ain't nobody, this occupation of a precinct won't work. But the bigger question is in those cities, is there enough white people that would come out and be like, we're going to come out here every day and face the police until black people's lives are changed? That's why this is such an interesting story for me as a journalist and being here from Seattle, because the dynamics around it is kind of amazing.